Blessed is he who in the prime of his youth and the heyday of his life will arise to serve the cause of the Lord of the beginning and of the end, and adorn his heart with his love. Abdul Baha. It is on young and active Baha'is like you that the Guardian centers all his hopes for the future progress and expansion of the cause, and it is on their shoulders that he lays all the responsibility for the upkeep of the spirit of selfless service among their fellow believers. Without that spirit, no work can be successfully achieved. With their triumph, though hardly won, is but inevitable. You should therefore try all your best to carry aflame within you the torch of faith, for through it you will surely find guidance, strength, and eventual success. Shoghi Effendi. This week, we are so excited to have Bayan Parhami give a talk on Finding Purpose, a Spiritual Guide for Youth. Bayan Parhami, one of the co-founders of Bahá'í Faith Modern Perspectives, is a student at the University of Virginia, where he studies cognitive science with a concentration in neuroscience and religious studies. He recently took a year off from university to dedicate himself to full-time service, focusing on community building initiatives and youth empowerment. During this time, he traveled to places such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, China, and Japan, gaining valuable insights into the global challenges facing humanity and deepening his commitment to contributing to the betterment of the world. Bayan's experiences have inspired him to connect his academic pursuits with practical efforts to foster individual and collective growth. And with that, I'll hand it off to Bayan.
Thank you for that introduction, Padia. So, hi everyone. You probably, if you've watched the channel before, you know me, Bayan. So before I start, I'll give a little bit of background about myself and about the Baha'i Faith. So I am a student at the University of Virginia, and I decided to take a semester off, which turned into a year off last spring. And I decided to do that because I didn't really know what my purpose was in life or in academics. And I needed some time to, recenter and think about what my future is. And so I was born a Baha'i and I grew up with the faith. And I kind of took it for granted until, I guess, a year or two ago. So I'll give a little bit of an introduction about what the Baha'i Faith is before we start, for those of you who are not familiar. So the Baha'i Faith is a world religion which began in the 1800s in Persia, now Iran. And its prophet founder, Baha'u'llah, whose name is Arabic for the glory of God, he proclaimed himself to be the latest messenger of God for this day. And his teachings are for all humanity to unite as one world. Whereas in the religions of the past, each were focused on uniting a greater and greater subset of humanity. For example, Christ was uniting communities, and Muhammad helped unite nations. Baha'u'llah is here to unite the whole world. So the purpose of this talk, I chose this topic because obviously it was something I was struggling with, finding a purpose and thinking about what do I want to do with my life? Who am I even? So after this year, I've gained a lot of insight into it. I'm not claiming that I know all the answers, but I wanted to share some of my thoughts and experiences in case there's any other youth out there listening, or not even youth, just someone who wants to find purpose in their life. And I thought hopefully my experiences can be helpful. So I want to frame this whole discussion around a quote from Baha'u'llah that says, "Let your vision be world embracing, rather than confined to your own self." So let me share my screen. So yeah, I titled this discussion about finding purpose. So before we get into what helped me find purpose in my life, I guess it all starts with identity, about who we are as a person. So this has been a question that not just regular people, but philosophers throughout history have thought about who are we as human beings? Are we physical? Are we animals? Are we spiritual? And what it's come down to in most cases is that what philosophers believe is that what we are is our minds. And from someone with a religious background, we would understand that to mean our souls, because our mind is an expression of our soul. So that was the first major realization for me growing up, which is that my identity is not these outer characteristics like what career am I going to go into? What are my skills, my talents? Am I smart? Do I have to study a lot in school, or does it come naturally? These are not my identity. But what my identity is that I am a soul that was created by God, and I'm on this earth. And so, with that understanding that a human being is essentially spiritual in nature, that kind of informed the next steps of my journey, which was, okay, if I am spiritual in nature, how do I connect with that? How do I get more in touch with that side of myself? Because when I was at school, I was just focusing on my studies and just kind of the material aspects of my life, and I wasn't in touch with my spiritual side. So I turned to Baha'u'llah's writings, and what I found was that there was a really crucial aspect of spirituality that I was neglecting, and that would be prayer and meditation. So obligatory prayer is one of the laws of the Baha'i Faith. And I mean, it's a law in Islam, and it was a practice in Christianity and other faiths. So prayer has always been something that's indispensable to religion. And in the Baha'i Faith, obligatory prayer, there's 3 of them, and you can choose one to do each day. And I chose a couple of these quotes because they helped me reflect on how important obligatory prayer really is. Baha'u'llah says, "All praise be unto God who has revealed the law of obligatory prayer as a reminder to his servants." So right off the bat, this helped me think about obligatory prayer in a different light. It's not something forced upon me that I do it just for the sake of doing it, but it's a reminder, because in your everyday life, you can get caught up in, there's so many things going on all the time that you're not really thinking about God. And this obligatory prayer, even the short obligatory prayer that Baha'u'llah has revealed, is only like 2 lines. And um and it's a reminder for every person every day about recentering yourself with God. And this other quote I found really, really interesting, because he says, "Within obligatory prayer is hidden and concealed a myriad effects and benefits. Indeed, they are beyond computation." So when I read this for the first time, I was kind of surprised, because it's saying that there's like unlimited benefits to doing obligatory prayer. And I have done obligatory prayer before when I had first read this, and I thought, well, I don't really see all these benefits it's talking about. It just seems like some words I'm saying. But what changed for me is that I had faith in the process. So it just thinking about it as a reminder, and that it has a myriad effects and benefits. And there's a lot of other quotes from Baha'u'llah that talk about how if you're faithful to God, you'll follow this commandment because it's for your own benefit. So back in the beginning of this year, I made a pact with myself. I'm going to try to say my obligatory prayer at least every day for a month and see if there's any difference, because at that point, I didn't really see any benefit in doing it, but I thought, well, I've never really given it like a full chance. So I tried for 1 month to say it every day. And throughout that month, I noticed a lot of changes in my life. So during this year I had taken off from school, I was involved in community service in various capacities, teaching children's classes, mentoring junior youth, tutoring study circles. And in community service, you're interacting with a lot of people, a lot of diverse people with different backgrounds, different ideas. And, there's a lot of room for conflict. And so during this month that I had decided to say my obligatory prayer every day, I ran into a lot of conflict. And I found myself increasingly turning to my obligatory prayer as something that like grounds me. Like it's something that made me calmer inside. And I'd always heard it described this way as spiritual food, as like food for your soul, just as you need to feed your body. But it's kind of hard to realize that you are malnourished until you like eat food. Um, because with spiritual things, you can go a long time without realizing you're even depriving yourself of something. So throughout that month, I had realized, well, this obligatory prayer had a lot more benefits than I had ever thought. It's almost like there was a whole nother side of life that I hadn't realized. So obligatory prayer was extremely crucial in my journey, at least. And of course, saying it every single day, I remember, but I think the putting in conscious effort, and now even when I forget to say it, it feels more like, oh, I forgot to brush my teeth. Like it's something more of a habit, and it has become like a central part of my purpose in life of keeping myself grounded. Now, the second thing that I found helpful in my journey was meditation. Now, meditation for a lot of people can seem like it's just sitting in silence and thinking about nothing, which, yes, sometimes that's what it is, but it has a deeper purpose than that. Meditation is a time where you can reconnect with your own soul because at all the other points in your day, you're occupied with something else. You're thinking about what do I have to buy at the grocery store? What do I have to do for work? What do I have to do for school? And you're not giving yourself a chance to even think about what you're doing and why. So meditation is something that I started doing. This is a quote from Shoghi Effendi, who is the great grandson of Baha'u'llah. He says, the inspiration received through meditation is of a nature that one cannot measure or determine. God can inspire into our minds things that we had no previous knowledge of if he desires to do so. So meditation gives you an opportunity, and at least it's been giving me an opportunity to pause and reflect on, okay, how did my day go? Did I do did I live up to my expectations for myself today? And if not, why? And what are my next steps? And it's during those times that you're silent and, communing with your own soul that God inspires you to do things. It was at times of meditation that I would think of things that just like ideas and things that I had never thought of before. And even a lot of scientists throughout history, it was through moments of meditation that they were inspired with, their great scientific discoveries. Like, I know, for example, the electrical aspect of neurons that was discovered through a scientist's moment of meditation. He was inspired um, to treat neurons as if they had electrical pulses, which no one had thought they did, but he was just randomly inspired to do so from a moment of meditation. And so meditation has a lot of different forms. In the Baha'i Faith, there's no set form of meditation. In fact, there's not really any rituals in the Baha'i Faith, but meditation, at least for me, it looks like sitting in silence and just reflecting on, sometimes I pick a quote just to reflect on, and I sit in silence with it for maybe 5. Allahu Akbar, which means God is the most glorious, 95 times every day. And the Universal House of Justice has described this as a simple meditative act. And this is supported in other religious traditions as well. In Buddhism, meditation, especially through the use of mantras, repeating something to yourself is really significant. And so the act of, because repeating a mantra to yourself can help calm your mind and focus yourself on the act of meditation. Because if sometimes if you don't have something to focus on, your mind will wander. So using a mantra can be helpful. Now, meditation and prayer. Prayer and meditation are very important factors in deepening the spiritual life of the individual, but with them must go also action and example, as these are the tangible results of the former. Both are essential. So yeah, action is the tangible result of prayer and meditation. So you pray and you meditate, but then you have to resolve to do an action, and then you actually have to do it. So this kind of ties into the next thing that I found helpful in my journey, which is service to humanity, service to communities. So Baha'u'llah states that all men have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. So already here, it sounds like you've been given your purpose in life, right? We've all been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. But that's kind of broad. So for me, when I took a time off of school, I met with a local Baha'i in my area and talked about service opportunities. So we made plans, and I moved into a neighborhood that was about 40 minutes from where I grew up. And from there, I lived with another Baha'i, and I engaged in service every day. The service, like I said, took many forms. I would teach classes for children, ages 5 to 10, teach them about spiritual virtues, giving them a strong moral foundation for later in their life. I also helped mentor junior youth groups, um, which is ages 11 to 14, that critical period where they're becoming youth and they have a lot more energy and, intellectual powers. And I help to channel those kids' energies towards good things and creating spiritual habits, and not just spiritual habits, but also intellectual habits, tutoring in school. And finally, study circles, which is helping others join this path of service for humanity. And all of these can be kind of encapsulated in this quote that I think many Baha'is are familiar with, that Baha'u'llah states that the betterment of the world can be accomplished through pure and goodly deeds, through commendable and seemly conduct. So this kind of goes along with the prayer and meditation, because commendable and seemly conduct, that's kind of like your inner condition and how it reflects in the world. And then pure and goodly deeds is your actions. What do you do? So that wasn't the only kind of service I did. Also, I went traveling with my mother to a few countries. We went to DRC, Congo, and we took part in some initiatives about nation building. And when I went there, I got to get a perspective outside of myself. I saw how different than what I thought. Like, I realized I've been living in a bubble, and I've been taking, life for granted. So I don't know, I would recommend any youth who's looking for purpose in life to travel to one place at least that you're not familiar with, even if it's within your own country, because a lot of the time you can be stuck in your own head and not realize how much more there is out there and actually how much you have to contribute. Because when I went to these different places like China and DRC, I realized that people are very different everywhere, but then they're also the same. And I have specific talents and strengths that can help people in other places. But when I'm here just alone in America, in my own town, not knowing those things, I think I'm just one person. Why don't I just focus on myself? There's not, the world is so big, but there's nothing I can contribute. But when you go outside of yourself and you gain those perspectives of different cultures and backgrounds, I realized, at least for myself, that there's a lot more that I can do than I had previously realized. And now I want to take us to a part of the discussion, which is modern challenges. I think these are challenges for youth everywhere in this global age that weren't problems, at least, I don't know, 100 years ago. The first one would be anxiety and depression. Like many other people, have, gone through periods of anxiety and depression about, purpose in life. It could be more general than that. But a lot of the time, anxiety and depression, distracts you from your purpose because it gets you caught up in yourself, and um, it really keeps you back from your potential. And this quote, when I first read it, I never applied it. But in this last year, I've realized how true it really is. This is what Baha'u'llah's son said. He said, "Be not the slave of your moods, but their master. But if you are so angry, so depressed, and so sore that your spirit cannot find deliverance and peace even in prayer, then quickly go and give some pleasure to someone lowly or sorrowful, or to a guilty or innocent sufferer. Sacrifice yourself, your talent, your time, your rest to another, to one who has to bear a heavier load than you." Now, this seems kind of obvious, I guess, that, okay, if you're so depressed, go help someone who's worse than you, and it'll make you feel better because you'll realize how much, you're not as bad off as you thought. But it's more than that. It's more than just the realization that people are worse off than you. Because when I was going through my own periods of anxiety and depression, I knew that. I knew that others are going through more difficult hardships than I am. But at the same time, without actually, sacrificing myself, my talent, my time, my rest to someone else who has to bear a heavier load than me, um, once I did that throughout this year, I've had many opportunities to help others. Um, it's not just the realization, but you actually, when you serve someone else, it uplifts your own soul. And it's more than just realizing that someone is worse off. It's uh it's more like your soul gets filled with new capacities, and you realize that you have more to contribute than, just wallowing in your own, anxiety and depression. They prioritize, their self. Like, I go to school to get an education for myself so I can make money, so I can have a family and, have a good life for myself. But I feel, at least in my personal experience, that that mindset leads to this kind of anxiety and depression. When you're so caught up in yourself, you notice all the imperfections. It's as if, imagine you were in a closed room with no windows. You would start to notice after a while every single imperfection in the room. You would notice the cracks on the paint. You would notice the stains on the carpet. You would notice every little imperfection. But that's only if you're in a room that's locked and no windows. If you open yourself up to the rest of the world, you'll see how insignificant those little imperfections are when compared with the rest of the world, and how, trivial they are, and how much more they're with the world. His inner life molds the environment and is itself also deeply affected by it. The one acts upon the other, and every abiding change in the life of man is the result of these mutual reactions. And I think that last sentence is the most important. He says that every abiding change is the result of these mutual reactions. So if you want your life to change for the better and in a lasting way, it's a result of these mutual reactions. So basically, what I realize is that I can't just focus on myself. Oh, okay, I need to go to therapy. I need to get a degree. I need to get a better job. That is not going to work, because you have to focus on others as well, because you're a result of your own environment. And if you're not working to change your environment, you're going to be stuck in yourself. And so every lasting change is a result of these mutual reactions. And I feel like this past year, I've been doing both. I've been, working on my inner life through prayer and meditation, but then also working on my community through the various services I've done. And I feel like my own life has changed in a lasting way. And, let me pause my share for a second. So at this point, when I realize, okay, I have to focus on myself, I have to, work on myself through prayer and meditation, but then at the same time, focus on society and, help my own community grow, do better. And, that can be at any scale. It can be something as simple as, um, if helping a coworker with a problem they have. That's something very simple. Or, helping a friend out through a difficult time. These are simple things that serve others, or they could be bigger. Like when I went to Congo, I got to observe different people doing nation building and improving that society materially. And that also is a much larger scale of service. But in all of these, I found that it does improve my life in a lasting way. And so at this point in my journey, and this takes us up to the present, I have to decide for myself, and everyone has to decide for themselves, is their own unique path, because everybody is connected to God. Everybody has a spirituality, and everybody lives in this world, but everybody's also unique. Every soul has its own particular aspiration and talents. So for me, I was studying at school cognitive science because I'm interested in the mind and how it works. And so for me, at least my current plan is, to go to school, get my education, and then hopefully go into some kind of medical field where I can help people either through therapy or medicine. And that would be my own unique contribution. But for everybody, it's different. Some people are more interested in social justice and they can work for nonprofits. Um, Whatever you do, you have to ask yourself, what can I do that serves humanity while also bringing joy and fulfillment to my own life? Because if you're not, then it makes you upset, if you know what I mean. And lastly, when you're in all of these processes, you have to make sure, at least this is what helped me. I had to remember that I'm not alone in this and that because it can be daunting. I have to pray every day. I have to meditate. I have to work on myself. I have to work on society. I have to do all these things to become a better person and have a happy life. But if I forget that I'm not alone, it becomes overwhelming and I kind of just want to abandon it all. But remembering that there's millions of people every day that are going through the same thing and they're all trying to, get to the same place, find their purpose in life. So collaborating with others in your community, um, for me, when I took this period off to do service, there was a bunch of other youth engaged in the same activities around me. And so finding a community, I think, is the most effective way to, not lose faith in yourself that you can do it. And I just want to close with um, a, a letter from Shoghi Effendi's advice. This is Shoghi Effendi's advice for youth. It was a letter that spoke to me a lot in this process, and because it touched on specifically what is my issue. Because I feel like youth these days are going through things that our parents didn't go through when they were youth. So this is Shoghi Effendi's advice. It's a little bit long, so bear with me, but we'll go through it slowly. He says, the problem, the problem with which you are faced is one which concerns and seriously puzzles many of our present-day youth. How to attain spirituality is indeed a question to which every young man and woman must, sooner or later, try to find a satisfactory answer. It is precisely because no such satisfactory reply has been given or found that modern youth finds itself bewildered and is being consequently carried away by the materialistic forces that are so powerfully undermining the foundation of man's moral and spiritual life. Now, I can relate to this even as a Baha'i, and I think people who did not grow up in the Baha'i faith can relate to this even more because most youth want to be spiritual, but there is no satisfactory answer in society about what is spirituality and how do you attain it. So what are you left with? the material aspects of civilization, which are more rampant. So Shoghi Effendi goes on to say, indeed, the chief reason for the evils now rampant in society is a lack of spirituality. The materialistic civilization of our age has so much absorbed the energy and interest of mankind that people in general no longer feel the necessity of raising themselves above the forces and conditions of their daily material existence. And this relates to what I was saying in the beginning about how when I didn't pray every day, I didn't even realize what I was missing. I didn't even feel a need for it because I didn't know there was something missing. He says, there is not sufficient demand for things that we should call spiritual to differentiate them from the needs and requirements of our physical existence. The universal crisis affecting mankind is, therefore, essentially spiritual in its causes. The spirit of the age, taken on the whole, is irreligious. Man's outlook upon life is too crude and materialistic to enable him to elevate himself into the higher realms of the spirit. And he goes on to say, it is this condition, so sadly morbid, into which society has fallen, that religion seeks to improve and transform. For the core of religious faith is that mystic feeling that unites man with God. This state of spiritual communion can be brought about and maintained by means of meditation and prayer. And this is the reason why Baha'u'llah has so much stressed the importance of worship. It is not sufficient for a believer to merely accept and observe the teachings. Now, that is what I did before this year. I grew up with the Baha'i faith and I took it for granted, and I knew it was the truth, but I didn't practice spirituality, if that makes sense. I just accepted and observed the teachings. So he says he should, in addition, cultivate the sense of spirituality, which he can acquire chiefly by the means of prayer. The Baha'i faith, like all other divine religions, is thus fundamentally mystic in character. Its chief goal is the development of the individual and society through the acquisition of spiritual virtues and powers. It is the soul of man that has first to be fed. And this spiritual nourishment prayer can best provide. Laws and institutions, as viewed by Baha'u'llah, can become really effective only when our inner spiritual life has been perfected and transformed. Otherwise, religion will degenerate into a mere organization and become a dead thing. The believers, particularly the young ones, should therefore fully realize the necessity of praying, for prayer is absolutely indispensable to their inner spiritual development, and this already stated is the very foundation and purpose of the religion of God. So this was kind of a shift in outlook for me because growing up, the Baha'i faith, I didn't really feel a deep spiritual, like an inner spiritual feeling about it. I knew it was like true, and I knew it was the, solution to society's problems. I knew it was right, but I didn't feel that impulse, something that draws you. I didn't feel like magnetically attracted to it. And I think this is why I wasn't praying. I didn't feel a connection to God. And you have to keep in mind that what he says, it says the Baha'i faith, like all other religions, is fundamentally mystic in character. It's a connection between the soul and its creator. And so religion shouldn't degenerate into a mere organization and become a dead thing. So my advice to any youth that are out there listening, or parents of youth, is to encourage yourself to try prayer for 1 month, like I did. I did it for a Baha'i month, which is 19 days. And if at the end of the month you don't feel anything, then good on you. But I think that if you give it a chance and have faith in it for 1 month, you'll feel that inner feeling, because I did. I had never said my obligatory prayer ever growing up, like ever. I maybe said it once when I turned 15, the age of maturity, but I never said it, on a daily basis like Baha'u'llah asks us to. And so I gave it a chance, though. And the reason I gave it a chance is because I was surrounded by other people also giving it a chance. So if there are any questions for me, I would love to answer them.
Thank you, Bayan, for your inspiring talk. So, yes, if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat and I'll read them aloud. One of the questions asks, what opportunities for service exist in the Baha'i faith?
Well, yeah, in the US, at least, I know there's a lot of opportunities for service. So, what I did was I found my local auxiliary board member, and I asked them, or I told him I wanted to get involved in service. I wanted to do something, outside of myself. And so he worked with me with a plan about what I could do for service. So for me, that looked like moving into a neighborhood um, in Fairfax, which is 40 minutes from me. And there I would do different activities like teaching children, mentoring junior youth, like I said. But that's not the only arena of service. There's also social action, which is, it arises naturally when a community is doing service. Social action addresses more broadly the material needs of a population. So that could be, helping out with homeless shelters, donating food, doing food drives, things like that. But beyond that, there's more. It's more than just that. You can do service every single day, and that's in the conversations you have with people. Um, Inspiring others, and it's referred to in the Baha'i Faith as engaging in the prevalent discourses of society, which is so for me, one discourse I would engage in is the medical or like the discourse around what is the mind, because that's what I study in school. I study about the mind and um, physical versus non-physical things. And how I can engage in the discourses is talking about the soul and talking about how the soul affects our everyday life and the opportunities that our spirituality bring to every day. But for others, maybe a doctor would have a different opportunity to talk with their peers, their physician peers about spiritual aspects. Because like that last quote said, the chief cause of the ills of society is a lack of spirituality. So in your everyday conversations, it's a one way to serve. I think the simplest way of serving is bringing back that feeling of spirituality and um, that condition of spirituality that humanity has lost over the years. And yeah, that's the most simple way of doing service.
Someone is asking if you could talk more about the activities in the Congo and your experience there and in China.
Sure. So in the Congo, I went there for about 2 weeks, and I was there with a team of people. Some high, some were not, but they were all dedicated to the upliftment of the nation. And so what we did there, or what I observed, was of government officials like ministers and generals, and we met with them and shared with them our vision for a better society. And specifically because the members of this team had been more interested in societies in Africa. So we presented, plans and like frameworks for action. And these are all rooted in spiritual principles of, equity and justice, that Africa should be on an equal playing field with the rest of the world, that Africa is not a receiver of debt, but should be exporting debt to other nations. And so it was mainly, consensus building among the leaders there. And it was really interesting to see that when you get down to the core principles of, what are we talking about? It's not about these policies. It's not about the outward things. It's about what do we believe as human beings is right. And when you get down to it, everybody agrees. So it was really, inspiring to see all these people from very, very diverse backgrounds agreeing about fundamental aspects of life and society and civilization. And then in China, I went there with my mother, and I got to see how the Baha'i framework for action is operating everywhere. And I saw that in Congo too, that these study circles, the Ruhi Institute, which I encourage everyone to engage in. The Ruhi Institute was in full force in Congo, in China, and I saw how, it's transforming communities just one person at a time. It's because real change comes from the grassroots. So in China, I saw um, study circles happening every day. I met local Baha'is there. Even with the communist government, it was very much, freedom of religion, and it was really inspiring to see how everybody in the world is working towards the same vision, Baha'u'llah's vision of unity, whether they're Baha'i or not. I think a lot of people who are not identified with the Baha'i faith still believe in Baha'u'llah's vision for the society, a united vision. And so it was really inspiring to see people of all faiths, engaged on that process. Not just all faiths, but all cultures and backgrounds engaged in that process of community building.
How can how can we motivate youth to deepen in the faith besides doing service?
Um, I think that's important actually, because yeah, youth need to deepen in the faith. I think for me, what was really important for me that I had done before all of this is that I had deepened in the faith. Because when I was looking at spirituality and turned to prayer as the answer, I would read the writings. I would deepen myself in all the writings, in Baha'u'llah's writings, Abdul Baha's writings. And I think that's what gave me that, solid framework for the future, because you have to really understand your faith to put it into practice, but also you have to put it into practice to understand it. Um, so how to motivate youth to deepen? I think I think only youth can motivate youth. So in your own community, find one or two youth that are already, have that motivation to be deepened in the faith and writings, and encourage them to make gatherings for friends. And it can start slow. Like in my community, we've been doing monthly game nights for the youth, where we have fellowship, and over time we've introduced more spiritual aspects to it. So in the beginning we would have a devotional, or we would talk about uh what services we want to do, because a lot of these youth are not involved in service or deepened. And so I think, and actually I think this applies to everything that everyone does, is that you have to have genuine friendships with people. People, if they see you as just using them to, you know, get to some end goal, like, oh, we need more youth to be deepened, no one really wants to do that, but because no one wants to be told what to do. But if you are genuinely friends with people and like have that fellowship, then you can encourage them because they know you care about them as a person and you're not saying it for some ulterior motive. So I think that the first thing to do to motivate youth is um, building deeper bonds of friendship and fellowship in the community.
Okay, the next question asks, how might the spread of community building activities to so many countries and populations worldwide inspire our local activities?
Um, Well, in our region in the US, we had some people go in, I think it was in February. They went to Brazil and they observed these community building activities that were taking place there. Because in Brazil, in one region, almost the entire population was taking part, or is taking part, in these community building activities. And so the people from my region went there to observe, how is this happening and why, and how can we apply it to our own reality. And when they got back, they wrote a report on it, and a lot of the things in it were really illuminating, and you know they 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 gave rise to a lot of thought about like American culture. And so more generally, how the spread of community building activities to so many countries and populations worldwide, I think what's good about that is that human culture is so diverse and so widespread that every population is going to apply these community building activities in their own way. And it's good to learn from that, because what they do in Kenya, for example, maybe you had never thought about that because it's not your culture to do a devotional that way. For example, holding a prayer meeting, you would never have thought to do it with music and drums like they do in Kenya. But I think learning from the experiences of other places in the world, can inspire our local activities. I know in our area, all our devotions now include at least one or two songs in African languages, because we've learned from experience that they're the most uplifting, they're the most, upbeat, and they get us riled up spiritually. And that's something that's invaluable that we've gained from these community building activities that have spread to African countries. So yeah, I think the spread of these community building activities to different countries inspires our local activities through, diverse cultural practices and, things like that.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, next week our speaker is Harold Rosen, and he will be speaking on Eye to the Ages, a Baha'i view of humanity's past, present, and future. And again, these talks occur every Saturday at noon Eastern Time, so please invite your friends and family. And if you would like to be on the weekly mailing list for these events, please fill out the contact form that I put in the chat. And we also put these in the description box of our YouTube videos. Well, thank you again, Bayan, and I hope everyone has a good week.
Bye, everyone.